I was going to ask why you believe that these gifts are continuing on. I guess you've answered part of that, but why then? How did you come to the conclusion of where you are in that regard, that these spiritual gifts are
Sure.
continuing today and that they haven't ceased?
Okay. Well, it's a great question. First, I would quote Leonard Ravenhill. Leonard Ravenhill said that a man with an experience is never at the mercy of a man with an argument. And
Right.
God has, yeah, it's a great quote. God has used me several times prophetically, and for me to deny the experience and the fruit of the experience would be, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, because I would say, look, this is, and I could give you as many examples as you have time for, of when God has used me prophetically to speak to somebody, to given me a dream about someone that was so direct and on point for them about things I had no knowledge of, that caused them to absolutely break in a good way.
If you don't mind, have you got a couple of sort of
Sure.
non-specific examples that you wouldn't mind listing?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a time when I was helping a football team. I was a JV coach, junior varsity coach. And the head coach suddenly, one night after a game, had a massive heart attack and died. His sons both played on the team. And he was only 34 years old. I mean, it was just, it was wild. And it was devastating. And I remembered I was really, kicking myself, because I remembered on the bus ride to the game, was thinking about how I really need to evangelize to Frank. That was his name.
Yeah.
And at that time, I came from a very Arminian perspective. And so in my view, basically, either I'm going to save this man and lead them to Christ, or they're not going to be saved, It's on me. Right.
Yeah.
And so I really wrestled with guilt about that. And I was in a time in my life where I have really encountered God in the most powerful way that I ever have to date, on November 5th of 2005. Well, to kind of condense this, I had a dream 2 weeks after he died. And in this dream, he came to my door at my apartment, Frank.
Yeah.
And I opened the door, and he's standing there, and he's glowing, just radiant. And he was a real big African-American man, but man, he's just glowing. And I have goosebumps just telling you.
Yeah.
And I
me
said,
too.
and I said, Frank, what are you doing here? Like the obvious question, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing here? You're dead, right? Like, and and he looked at me and he said, I came to check on, and I'll leave the name out of it. And he named his older son. And I said, well, Frank, he's taking it hard. I said, everybody's taking it hard. None of us saw this coming. And he put his hand on my shoulder, and he looks at me right in the eyes. And he says, all of my chains are gone.
Wow.
And I looked at him, and I just kind of I stood there, and I knew what he meant in a way, but I didn't, or why he was telling me this. And then he smiled real big, and he held his arms open, and he just disappeared. Well, I didn't see his son, the one he named. After that, he had his family members, they moved him and moved his brother, and I did not see him. I haven't seen him since. But I had this nagging, just this, I can't even put my face, this sense that I have got to somehow contact his son and tell him about this dream. And as, year after year went by, I just kind of forgot all about it.
Right.
And a couple of years ago, for some reason, that came to me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to see if his son is on Facebook. So I looked up his son, and sure enough, there he was. And I thought, okay, here we go. This is it. I'm like, I need to pray about this, what if I offend him? What if he's mad that
Yeah.
I'm even talking about the death of his father?
That
You know, like
moment
I
we
had
all
all,
face.
oh yeah, man. So I sent him the message and I said, I just wanted to share with you this dream that I had 2 weeks after your father died. And I don't know why, but I just feel compelled. I have to give it to you. And so I told him the dream. Well, then the worst thing that could have ever happened. He saw it, but didn't reply. And I went,
Yeah.
oh, great. I've offended him. I heard it. And I'm like, why did I even feel that way? And, well, for 2 days. And after 2 days, he replied and said, I'm sorry, I haven't responded up till now. I've not known what to say. For 1 year after my father died, I heard the sounds of chains being dragged through the house.
Wow.
And I was convinced that was my father in hell.
Oof.
And he said, you'll never know what this message means to me.
Yeah.
And thank you for sending it. And that was it. And I just sat there like dumbfounded. So as I have this dream and this very pointed message, all my chains are gone. After asking about that particular son, unbeknownst to me, his son's not sleeping at night because he thinks his dad's in hell. Now, here's what's really cool. I did a little bit more digging, and I found out that Frank, and I did not know this, that Frank had joined a new converts class 2 weeks prior to his death. That he had given his life to Christ 2 weeks prior to his death. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, praise God
and it's
for that.
just like, I mean, but that's an example. That's one example. And I have several more where the Lord has just given me something. My wife and I were traveling. This one's real short. My wife and I were traveling. We're doing a around the country road trip. And when we were heading up north, we were going through Wisconsin. She was asleep. I was actually listening to a debate between an atheist and a Christian. And it's snowing, and I'm in Wisconsin, and it's night, and there's nobody on the road, and you just got the windshield wipers going. And I'm into this debate. I'm about 2 hours into it. And I'm really into it. And the Lord just spoke to me and said, turn the radio off. And so I was like, okay. So I turned the radio off. Right? Now I just got the windshield wipers going, and I'm just sitting there. And the Lord showed me some friends that we were going to be meeting in Colorado on our trip. And he said to me, he showed me their faces, and he said to me, she's expecting. And that was it. And it was like, as soon as I heard that, everything went back to normal. I could go back to my debate, and I was like, okay, whatever.
What do you even do with this knowledge?
Right, exactly. And why would God tell me? Like, dude, why do I need to know that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a pregnancy test, right? And so we went to several different states, and eventually we worked our way down to Colorado, and we met them for dinner. And when we're at dinner, they both start getting weepy, telling us about their struggles to get pregnant for the last 2 years, and how the doctor has said that that it didn't look good. It didn't look promising because of everything they've done and gone through without success. And it seemed to be her. And so, Josh, they have no idea. My wife didn't even know, and I'm sitting there looking at them across the table, and I just start laughing. Right? I mean, that's the pastoral response.
Worst.
That's what you learn in seminary.
Yeah. The worst response.
Right. And they're looking at me, and I'm like, guys, I said, this laughter is joy. It's not scorn. I said, I'm just going to tell you what I saw. And I'm like, I'm driving through it, and I tell them the story. I had no idea that they had even been trying to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And I said, and the Lord just said, she's expecting. And then everything went back to normal. And I said, look, I can't even believe this is happening right now, but I just have to. God entrusted that to me. And obviously, this is what's on your hearts. And I said, so why don't you go and pray about this? And if I'm wrong, I will apologize profusely, and make sure that I don't drink the cappuccino I drank when I was going to Wisconsin again. Well, 2 days later, he sent me a picture of a positive pregnancy test.
Wow.
And And that was just another one of those, boom, like
Yeah,
undeniable empirical things where it's like, look, that's not John, that's God.
absolutely.
Only he knew that. And so it's happened so many times in my life, Josh, that I would be a liar and a hypocrite and a fraud if I said God doesn't speak to people today.
Yeah. And for example, when you're having that dream, when you were having that dream about, is it Frank? You said, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what did you feel like you were living that dream? Was it like you were
Yeah.
having a conversation with him in that moment, like
Yes.
a vivid?
Yeah. When I woke up, I didn't know that it was a dream. Yes,
Wow.
absolutely. Um, when I woke up, I ran immediately to my front door. It
Hmm.
was that real to me, and I feel silly even telling you that, but it's true
Yeah.
because it was just that real. It was
Hmm.
like that was like, yeah.
Yeah. And when you're having this sort of experience, what
Mm-hmm.
do you then, I guess, other than how it plays out, are there any hallmarks in your experience that sort of give you an inkling that this is a God thing and not just something that's just going on through the course of my day that's coming into my mind?
These are excellent questions. You're really good at this.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yes, there are. And I would say the first one is a stopping of everything, a very direct, um, in the moment stop.
Hmm.
I can't, it doesn't bring fear, it doesn't bring confusion, but it is as if a commander of some sort has come to me and said, stop, here's the orders.
Like a record scratch and stop.
Exactly. It's like, this is what I'm giving you. And even if you don't know what to do with it at the moment, you're going to know.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, I'm giving you this. And when that moment comes, you'll know it and share it.
Hmm.
That's been the thing, the constant theme of it. And it's a knowing. I've explained it like this, and I think this will probably give a little more insight. For me, it would be like having a book.
Hmm.
And if I have maybe like a smaller book, let me grab a tiny one off my shelf here. I can hold this book in my hands, and you might not even know that I'm holding it in my hands. Matter of fact, if I move my fingers and stuff, you have no idea that this book is here.
Hmm.
But if I open my hands, I reveal the book. But the book was already there. For
Hmm.
me, what happens is God takes something that is in reality, like she's expecting, like all my chains are gone. These are realities, right?
Yeah.
It's always right there. But what he does in these moments is he goes, John, stop.
Hmm.
That's it. And it's like, okay, now I know this. I know this for a fact. There's you want another example of this?
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was working at a school, and I was bivocational at the time, and I used to work with teenagers who were especially troubled, and one-on-one.
Hmm.
And I used to basically have to go with them at school all day and sit through all their classes because they fought a lot and everything. And during the lunch hour at this particular school, I used to sit with this lady. She was an elderly lady who was the wife of a longtime Methodist minister. And we would have such great discussions over lunch.
Hmm.
And this one particular day, I mean, I've been there half the school year, and every day I sit across from her and we have these conversations. They're not usually too supernatural, but theological.
Hmm.
And we're talking, and she's in the middle of saying something, and I said, "Stop," just like that. And she goes,
Wow.
"I'm sorry," and I was like, "We have to pray right now." And she goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "We have to pray right now for the safety of the students, right now." And she was like,
Freaked out.
"Okay." Yeah, right. Like, this isn't John Wesley, this isn't the founders of Methodism. This is now, and it's like, okay. And so I
Yeah.
bowed my head, and she just kind of sat there with her head bowed, probably out of respect or fear, or And
Bit of both.
yeah, like, oh, this guy's wacko. And I just started praying right there. And that was on a Friday. And the following Monday, before it was even lunchtime, she came and found me and had the paper in her hand. And she put it in front of me. And she goes, how'd you know? And I didn't even know what the paper said.
Yeah.
So I grabbed the paper and I'm looking at it. And that Friday, right after that lunch period that we had, there was another lunch period. Well, a student went into the bathroom, and not long after the student was in the bathroom, several police officers came in. The student was in a stall loading a handgun.
Oh, wow.
With a list of names that he had on him. And, man, I get short of breath just talking about it.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
She goes, how did you know that was happening? And I said, I don't know. I didn't even know it was that. I just knew that God said I had to pray for the safety of the students. That's all I knew.
And how did the police, like, were they, how did they get to the school? Like, what was the warning sign that triggered them getting there? You know, how did they even know?
Yeah, a friend of the kid who was in the stall doing it had known about it and didn't want to say anything. And so at the point that I was praying, that was the point that he was on the fence about whether to report it or not. So as soon as he reported it, they called the cops immediately. And so there was probably a 20-minute window from the time that I started praying and the time that the cops arrived. Wow. So it was just boom, boom, boom. And so I believe that the Lord was using my prayers more to move on that kid's heart to say, report this. Yeah. Don't be in fear. You need to say something. And who knows what the ending would have been, you know, otherwise. So
I just dread to think. And it's interesting to me that merely being faithful when you're given these kind of words can have such grave consequences, you know, whether it's someone who's running around thinking that their dad's in hell and you know, can't move on, or it's, you know, literally lives being saved. Being faithful when these words and these when these moments come to you can have profound consequences.
Yeah. And I've always wondered too that if I didn't say anything, if I hadn't prayed, would God have alerted another Christian? Would God have passed by me and just said, look, there was a blessing in this for you too. I believe that the only thing that ever impresses God from a human being is faithfulness. Not our talents, not our abilities, not our intelligence. I don't believe any of that, because all that combined amounts to nothing and relative to who he is. Yeah. And so I think that what he really looks for out of us is faithfulness. I think that is the thing, that is the key. And that's what I extrapolate from scripture that really gets God's attention, is people who are faithful in prayer. They're faithful in seeking him. They're faithful in the tasks that they're doing, whether it's shepherding some sheep out in the field, or, you know, whether it's, you know, being in a wine press and because you're scared of everything and you're hiding like Gideon and you know, you're sitting there sifting wheat where nobody ever would do that, and your name means chicken, and you know, there was a faithful component about it, and he knew that he was faithful, and that's why God comes and he shows him favor. I think that that's how we get the Lord's attention, because there is no partiality in God.